avec nous et qui va nous rejoindre ici, vous pouvez l'applaudir. Très grand pilote.
Je vous laisse vous approcher. Je vais vous approcher. Je vais voir devant vous.
Mic 1, this is Naomi's com mic, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to the fourth round of W Series here in Le Castellet. I am joined by Ayla Agren. We're a few minutes late, technical issues, you know, these things happen, but better late than never, Ayla. Thank you for joining me today in the commentary box.
Yeah, we're seeing here again, Chadwick is currently P1 after about 5 minutes into the first practice. And followed by that is Marta and Kymäläinen. So looking at...
Okay, so Isla, you've been to this track before. Tell me what you know about the circuit. What makes Le Castellet a special place for the drivers to be visiting?
I think it's one of those places that is super technical in certain areas. Other areas are really flowy, and with that being said, you keep pushing, but it's a hard place to figure out. So it's special in the way we're here in France in beautiful surroundings, but it's definitely not an easy one to just jump in and be quick at.
Well, the sun is certainly shining here today, and as most of Europe and the UK will know, there's been a bit of a heat wave, so these drivers are up for a very tough challenge here in Le Castellet, with temperatures ranging between 33 to 37 degrees Celsius. Isla, how much of a challenge is it for these drivers to drive in these types of conditions?
It's definitely challenging, and it's challenging in a different way. Racing is really mental, and with that being said, when it gets warm, you get tired faster, and a big challenge too is just staying hydrated and being strapped into the cars for a while prior to the session starting. Just a simple thing of not being able to get out and use the restroom before in time is tricky at times.
So we are riding around with Jamie Chadwick at the moment, our championship leader. We're 5 races into this championship, and Jamie's got a 100% win streak this season so far. So yep, talking about focus.
Very impressive, very impressive.
Indeed. So, you know, there's still 5 races to go, so a lot can change. We're going to have some questions coming in from viewers. So if you guys are watching at home, make sure to send us some questions using the hashtag AskWSeries on Twitter, and we will try our best to answer as many of your questions. We've already been sent some questions ahead of the session, though. And one of them was, what is it like to drive one of these F3 T318 cars?
A lot of fun, Naomi. I think you can back me up on that one. It's not the easiest car to jump in and be fast at, but it's very rewarding when it finally clicks and you can feel the speed through the corners, and it's definitely a thrill.
So, talking about Jamie Chadwick's and her dominance this year, second in the championship at the moment is Abby Pulling, and very suiting that we have a question asking, what are your thoughts on the rookie drivers this season?
I think Abby Pulling, together with the rest of the rookies, have done really well, and it's like I mentioned, it's not an easy car to jump into for a lot of the rookies. It's a big jump coming straight from karts. But Abby has definitely stood out in the rookie class this year of, like you said, she's P2 in the championship against a lot of the veterans at this point.
So, Paul Ricard, when you look at it, is a very colorful track. As you can see, loads of blue lines, some red lines, some yellow lines, but
a lot of lines.
Loads of lines, and a lot of people want to know what that is about. So, interesting fact, those blue lines and those red lines are actually there to slow the cars down. So they have a slightly different surface or material used for those lines, and every different color has a different strength of how much it slows the drivers down, right, Isla?
Yes, it is. You can almost compare it to like different levels of sandpaper, the way it grips, and what it does is that if you spin and go off track, it stops the tires down. It slows you down really fast and makes it a safe way. And to begin with, Paul Ricard was also designed to be a test track, and it makes it safer for the drivers to push and go off track without necessarily hitting the walls while doing that.
So that's an interesting fact. Talking about interesting facts, Isla, I have a very interesting fact for you and those of you at home listening. France is actually, don't know if you knew this, the birthplace of motor racing.
I did not know that.
So the earliest events in France were city to city, and the first was an 80-mile Paris-Rouen event on July 22nd in 1894. Can you imagine?
That is very important. July 22nd is today.
Very long time ago, that's correct.
Yeah.
So the first Grand Prix was the 1906 French Grand Prix at Le Mans, which was held over 12 laps. of a 103-kilometer circuit. That means that the whole race was a total of 1,240 kilometers.
Wow.
That, I mean, how many drivers did they have per car? Because that sounds like an endurance race.
I was just going to say, it sounds like they just started straight into the endurance world and not the sprint world by any means.
So, another question from the viewers at home. Isla, this one's for you. Who do you think is the most promising driver this season so far? Let's not go for the obvious, because Jamie's obviously currently leading the championship.
Yes, she's been very, very impressive this year. But I think we touched upon her a little bit earlier, is Abby Poling. She's been very impressive, and the fact that it's her first full season this year is out beating a lot of the veterans is, yeah, lack of better words, impressive.
Agreed. Chloe Chambers seems to be going pretty well in this session so far. Oh, just as I say that, she jumps up into P1. Another rookie this season for us, and doesn't have much experience in Formula racing, so it's great to see her picking up the tricks of W Series as quickly as she has. Do you think she'll be getting some help from her teammates?
I definitely think that both Jamie and Chloe are working well together, and I think that was a big part of the reasoning of picking the two different drivers, is so the generation drivers could work together and help build Chloe in for another season.
So that was actually me being quite bad at reading, given that Chambers and Chadwick are the same first three letters. I was actually mistaken. That was Jamie who went up into first place, but nonetheless, you know, Chloe has had pretty much around top 10 finishes all season so far, which, you know, for her first season is pretty good.
No, and talking from experience, it's not an easy feat to come. She's been racing in the US and coming over to Europe. Granted, we started in Miami, but that was also a new track for her. Going to all these new events, new car, new tracks, it's a lot to take in, especially being at Formula One weekends where you're in the big show.
So this is the first time W Series is having a race in France and here at Le Castellet. Some new circuits on the calendar for W Series this season, including Japan and including Mexico, which we were supposed to go to last year, but we didn't end up making it there. So what has been the most exciting addition to the W Series calendar for you so far?
The most exciting addition to me, I think, is Mexico. That was one I was really looking forward to last year, and the fact that it's during the Day of the Dead and just the whole atmosphere during that event, and all the exciting things I'd heard about it prior. That was a little bit of a letdown that we weren't going there last year, but very excited about heading there this season.
Definitely, and I think it will be a little bit of a level playing field for the drivers, seeing as I don't think pretty much most of them haven't been there, probably none of them. This track is actually a track that quite a lot of drivers have visited and quite a lot of drivers have done pre-season testing here. So how much of a benefit do you think it'll be for those who have had those days of testing here?
I think it's huge. I think it's one of those things that will level out the field quite a bit. The more drivers that have been to the same tracks, the more of a ground zero you're starting from for everyone. So I think we'll get some exciting racing and close racing at this event. We have a couple that haven't been here, but we'll get some chance to get laps in here today, and I think we'll see some close fights.
So I've done a couple of laps around this track for some VOP testing, but I've never raced on this track. You have, Isla, so tell me,
yes.
And this is part of one of the questions that we've been asked from our viewers, is what part of this track is the most important to get right to do well on a race day?
I would say turn 15 is really important, just because it leads into a really good passing zone, as well as turn 6, turn 7, that sequence leading into the chicane with 8, 9. Those will be the big passing areas. So from a racing perspective, those would be my kind of priorities to figure out. But the most tricky corner, I have two, I would say, is turn 11 and turn 12. They're not your traditional corners that you see at most tracks. So figuring those out, I would say is the hardest part of this track, at least in my opinion.
I think I will definitely agree with you with regards to turn 12. Slightly an awkward corner. It's, you're going to kind of
very
interpret
long.
it, and
Yeah.
the lines aren't very clear, and you can take a couple of different racing lines into there. So it'll be interesting to see how the drivers interpret that. But talking about the characteristics of this track in general, the first two sectors really are quite flowy.
Yes.
Whereas the
It's
third
all about the rhythm and finding your way.
Indeed, indeed. And then the third sector is a lot more technical.
Yes, very much so, and not super easy to find your marks or your references, because it is, like you mentioned, very many different ways of doing that section, and with limited track time, getting the opportunity to try all the different versions out and figuring out which one works best for you will take a little bit of time.
So last time out in Silverstone, Ida, you didn't join us.
No, unfortunately not.
So welcome back.
Thank you so much.
What are you most looking forward to this weekend?
See everyone race. It's like I said, I think this will be a really good event since there's a lot of drivers that have been to this track before, and I think that will make this race really good, because you will see a lot of close calls. We're midway through the season. A lot of people have things to show and want to get on the podium and get that win. So, well, it'll be interesting.
It definitely will. So on that note, let's talk to our pit lane reporter, Amy Reynolds. Amy is down in the pit lane now.
Good morning. It's lovely and toasty warm here at the moment. I'm actually pretty glad we're the first out on track this morning, because I'm sure it's going to be really, really cooking later on this afternoon. But just a couple of bits of information to get us started with. A couple of our drivers unfortunately lost their luggage when they arrived here in the south of France. So you'll see Marta Garcia and both Chloe Chambers unfortunately missing bits of their equipment. They have obviously been able to get like for like, but, well, not like for like. They've had to basically subsidise with other bits. Chloe Chambers you'll spot out on track. She's not using her usual lid. And then Marta Garcia using a different hands device. So, as you guys very well know, it's not a complete disaster, but when you haven't got that familiarity of your usual equipment, it does slightly put you on edge, just slightly. We've got quite a few drivers coming back into pit lane just to make some minor adjustments to get us going with, and obviously pressure checks and things like that. So we'll let you know if anything else interesting opens up in the next few minutes.
Thank you for that, Amy. So actually an interesting fact to add to that, Isla was just pointing at herself saying, "That's mine, that's mine." So it turns out that Marta Garcia's replaced hands device belongs to you, Isla.
It is, and hopefully it'll be going fast this weekend.
Hopefully your hands device brings some luck. Oh, a little moment there from Abby pulling.
Yeah, she's definitely pushing, and I think
Another little moment there from Chloe as well.
Yep, they're all pushing here, and I think that this is where this track really benefits is that you can't afford to go off track without really being close to hitting anything.
Nice little drift there from Bianca Bustamante as well. Well, look, these drivers are under quite a lot of pressure given the fact that they have a 30-minute practice, and then this evening they go straight into qualifying. So now is the time to test the boundaries. Now is the time to push a little bit further than the limit. And this is a track that actually is quite forgiving when you do, overstep those limits. There's some room for risk. There's not, a lot of areas where, you're going to be met with a wall or a big curb. So the kind of track where you can experiment quite a lot.
Definitely, and I think that a big topic of this year has been track limits. So it'll be interesting to see how hard the stewards will go down on that. And as I say that, Juju just got her lap taken away for track limits.
Track limits. Loads of drivers are having issues with track limits out in Austria. Last F1 race, a big topic of conversation around whether it's fair to penalize the drivers for track limits infringements that don't provide any, time gain. I guess I will ask you, Isla, how you feel about it, but you are a driver, so you're going to take the driver's perspective. But according to the stewards, there's 2 white lines. The rule is quite simple. Stay between them. At least one tire needs to be between the 2 white lines. How hard is it? to make that happen?
I think as a driver, you're going to push to the limits, right? And if the track is any wider, your eyes is gonna see that, and you're gonna push for it. But I definitely see the steward standpoint, and the wider areas are there for a reason, and safety. But you're always going to want to go faster.
I think a lot of people underestimate, because the fact of the matter is it should be quite simple to keep the car between the two white lines. But
Yeah.
when you're in the car, visibility isn't exactly extremely clear. It's hard to see exactly where that white line is. So a lot of drivers, you'll hear them coming on the radio saying, I wasn't over the track limits. And that's because generally it's quite hard to see where that white line is, isn't it?
Yeah, it is hard, and a lot of the times you're pushing, and you're always going to be super close to margin, and sometimes you will go over it. And when you're racing as well, you're close call with a lot of other cars, which means that your reference points might not be visible at all times, which then makes it harder.
So the temperature right now is track temperature 42.5 degrees, whereas we have an air temperature at the moment of 28.7, which is actually quite reasonable for what we've been dealing with.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
But it is quite early on in the day. So later tonight, we have our qualifying session. How do you think the drivers will have to take in track and air temperature into consideration when dealing with the tires?
It makes a big difference on tires and how fast you're able to start pushing on it. It will definitely be cooler this evening during qualifying, so we'll see how everyone takes that into account and deals with it.
Now, looking at things at the moment, Bikeskiffer top of the charts. Nerea Marti started off the season really strong, putting it on pole position in Miami. Abby Pulling is third, usual suspect. And then Marta Garcia is fourth, with Belen Garcia fifth. So the Spanish are out in full force this weekend, it looks like.
They are. They're used to the heat, Naomi.
You think that's what's giving them the competitive edge?
No, I don't think so. I think they've all worked hard. I know some of them have been here before, and I think you're seeing the results of that right now.
That is correct. So Bikeskiffer, year one in 2019, was a very strong contender in the championship. Last year she struggled a little bit. She seems to be sort of making her comeback slowly but steadily. Do you think that this could be an event where she could shine?
I think this could be a turning point for Bike. As you mentioned, she did really well in 2019, and definitely wasn't her best season last year, and now she's just focused on one race at a time, and I think we're going to see a strong Bike here at Paul Ricard.
Indeed. Look, let's talk about some other drivers. Alice Powell, having a little bit of a tricky season last weekend, or last race weekend for W Series out in Silverstone. An issue with her car getting off the line meant that she, had to get back into her grid position before safety car line 2.
Yep.
1, 2. And that didn't happen. So she was given a drive-through penalty and a 10-second stop and go. Out in Miami, similar issue, stalled on the line and then had a little incident into the wall, which basically ended her race weekend. How do you think she can pull this back together and put herself back in the fighting position for this championship?
I think at this point, you just have to start looking at one race by race. Can't think too much of the championship. Just do the best she can at this point, and what she can control, get as many points as possible, and that's how she's going to climb back up. And we know she's strong. She's done some uncharacteristic mistakes for her, and I think this is the time to turn it around.
It's going to be definitely a little bit of a mountain to climb to turn the situation around. Jamie Chadwick currently has 100 points in the championship versus Alice Powell, who's on 33. That's a 67-point difference at this point in the season. Is not what Alice Powell would have expected, especially after her extremely strong performance in last season's championship.
No, I 100% agree, and Jamie's done an amazing job this year. She's been super consistent, hasn't done any mistakes, hasn't hasn't stressed. We saw it even in Miami. She maybe wasn't the fastest in the first race, but she was just there, just waiting for a mistake to happen and capitalized on it when it did. So I think it's going to be very hard beating Jamie at this point with her big league, but it's not impossible. So the other ladies just need to keep digging if they want to keep fighting for this championship.
Okay, well, Amy is down in the pit lane and has a little update for us, so let's go to her.
Yes, we've had most of the cars into the pit lane now. The pit lane's nice and quiet, so everybody is out on track, other than Abby Pulling, who I can just about spot at the end of pit lane. And we do believe that she's having a bit of an issue right now with not locking her rear tyres. There's a couple of setup changes going on for Fabian Volvend, having some work done on her front wing settings. Marta Garcia also adjusting her roll bar. But as you can imagine, this is a nice steady weekend in terms of conditions. We're not expecting things to change too much over the course like we had in Silverstone. So it's a good opportunity to play with settings. Well, remember that Emma Kymäläinen, going back a few races now, was actually a bit frustrated with herself that she didn't really play enough, and she didn't change the parameters of her setup enough. She could have been a little bit more out there for qualifying. So it'll be interesting to see on these next few runs how things get shaken up. I think we've just had Abby leave the pit. I know she's still there from what I can see. We've got a very long view down the end of pit lane, but we'll keep you updated if anything else interesting comes up.
Thank you for that, Amy. Now, Ida, we've got a couple of minutes left, so for those at home who don't know, what is the role of a W Series reserve driver, and what does the rest of your weekend look like?
Well, a lot of it is sitting here with you, Naomi, and filling in the gaps of the driver versus being not in the car seat. But a lot of it is just being ready in case something were to happen, which to me, honestly, is probably more of a challenge than knowing that you are in the car. But no, being around, being here with partners, and be useful in any way you can.
And will you spend any time with any of the driver coaches or of the engineers looking through data after the session, for example? Oh,
absolutely. It's like I said, you try to be as ready as possible, as even if you're not in the car, and that means being on the sim, talking to coaches, talking to other drivers, looking over any data you can get your hands on if anyone's feeling generous to share, and yeah, you make the best of it.
So there are 9 teams here at W Series and 18 drivers. For those of you at home who don't know, all the cars are mechanically identical. We share all the data across all the teams. So Isla, my next question to you is, how do you pick which team or which engineer you choose to work with on a weekend like this when you've got the choice of 9 different teams and 18 different engineers, I believe?
So that's all. The teams are the ones choosing the drivers at the beginning of the season, and
no, I mean you. How do you choose?
How do I choose?
Yes.
That it's hard to say. As you mentioned, the cars are identical, so on that front, I would be more than happy jumping into any team. From an engineering standpoint, you work as well as you can with the one you get the chance to work with, and a lot of the engineers here are super experienced. They've been with W Series for several years now. Some are new. Most of them have been here since I got on board, and I've only heard good things about them. So I would try to work with someone I worked with before, but if not, I would knock it out with someone else.
Okay, perfect. Well, Jamie Chadwick just bumps herself up a little bit to P2, but it's not enough to answer to our quickest contender in this practice session, which is Weizskibisse. Let's just take a little look at what's happening there. That is
Bruna
Tomaselli. Taking a little bit of a shortcut. It's quite confusing, honestly. If you have bad eyesight, there are 167 different configurations of this track, if you would believe that. I'm not entirely sure how that works, but that is a
Yeah?
fact I've been
Oh.
given. And as you
That's
can
a
see,
lot.
there's lots of options of where to go, so the drivers need to be very switched on. They all mostly have done simulator training before coming here if they haven't already been here, so they all do know where they're going.
Yes.
Although, you know, they seem to be going a little bit outside of the usual, you know?
That's when you know they're pushing, is when they're a little bit off track as well.
So Nuria Marti just putting in a little purple sector there. She's looking really strong this weekend as well. So there's a yellow flag in sector 1. The clock has run down to 0 minutes, but not everyone's crossed the line just yet. It's back to green, so the drivers will still be pushing to complete their final laps. I'm going to put you on the spot, Isla, because I tend to do this with everybody.
Oh no.
Who are you putting your money on for qualifying today? Top 3.
Beitske.
On pole?
Beitske on pole. Beitske on pole, Jamie, and then I'll go with Bellin.
Okay. Nice choice. Oh,
How about
that
you?
was that yellow flag moment is Abby Eaton just having a little spin there. I'm going to say... Oh, everyone's drifting around out there, aren't they? So the gap between Beitske and Jamie was quite tight. So Marta Garcia seems to have pipped her there at the end. This is hard. This is a hard call to make. I was gonna say Jamie on pole, Beitske P2, and I'm gonna go Nuria Marti, 3rd quickest. I'm not going to put a lot of money on it though, because I think the gaps are pretty tight. As you can see, the top 5 within 4/10, so it could go a couple of different ways.
Yeah, and as we see, Beitske just jump back up to P1.
Yeah, so maybe you're right, Isla. Well, we'll have to wait until later to see. So for those of you who enjoyed this practice session, make sure not to miss out on our qualifying session this evening. Latest session I think we've ever had in W Series.
I believe it is, yeah. And hopefully it will help the drivers staying as cool as possible, because it will definitely be a hot day here today.
Yeah, I think the drivers will be, for the first time, not too upset that the session's quite late, given the fact that it'll calm down a little bit with the heat.
Yes, I did hear rumors about a little pool here.
Here's a little replay of something that happened to Beitske. Maybe she received that that quickest time abusing track limits. No, that looks pretty clean to me. Let's see, where is it gonna go wrong? That looks clean to me. So I guess we're just looking at a really good lap from Beitske Visser.
Definitely looks like that way.
Okay, well, I believe all of the cars have crossed the line and will be making their way back to the pit lane and back to the W Series paddock, getting ready to prepare for tonight's qualifying session, which is coming thick and fast. The French fans all getting a lovely tan this weekend.
Wear sunscreen, guys.
Wear your sunscreen, drink water, be safe, and have fun. Well, that's all from us now. Join us tonight at 7:25 Central European Time for a 30-minute W Series practice session here in Le Castellet. If you don't know where to watch, head over to the W Series website and hit the button that says where to watch. On screen is the British summertime time for the session, so it is, I confirm, 19:25 Central European Time this evening.